Hey there. So today we're going to be talking about Tony Hawk games. Now, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 Plus 4 HD just released earlier this month. Now, I have just started playing it. I started playing it yesterday, or the day before actually. And I am really enjoying my time with it. I did not buy the game. I got it through PC Game Pass because I looked at it as, do I want to spend $50 on a game, or do I want to just pay $10 to PC Game Pass that has the game on there? So I went with the Game Pass route so I can just play it on my PC. I will eventually buy a physical copy, but I'm just going to wait for the price to go down because I really don't want to spend $50 on a game right now. I have other things I have to buy, so Game Pass is a savior for that, that's for sure. So before we start talking about Tony Hawk, I'm going to go ahead and crack open a brewski. And this main subject of this right now that I actually wanted to talk about was not just Tony Hawk, but what was the last good Tony Hawk game? Now, when I say last good Tony Hawk game, I'm not counting the most recent remake and, 1+2 remake from a few years ago. I mean, just the last standalone game that was actually good. Because Tony Hawk games, were great all the way, through Underground, from Pro Skater to Underground. And then, you had some spin-off titles that weren't so great. And in my opinion, the series just kind of fell off after a certain title. And I'm going to say this right now, because this is actually the only physical Tony Hawk game I own. I'm about to show it here after we take a sip of this beer. Okay, so I used to own all the Tony Hawk games, but things happened. It's been a long time. I had to sell some of my collection, do those things. But I do have one Tony Hawk game still, and that is Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. And it's just funny enough, this is actually the game that I think was actually the last actually good original Tony Hawk game. Because just like the Underground games, you get that classic Tony Hawk feel. They added the BMX options to where you can ride BMX bikes. They still have the tagging with the spray paint that Underground introduced. And it's just still an all-around amazing, fun game. The 360 version is the best, but the PS2 version isn't bad either. I play this version pretty regularly. Now, the game after this was actually Project 8. Now, Project 8 is still a good game. I loved Project 8 for what it was. It had that new little gimmick they introduced where it was a slow motion flipping your board. Like, it zoomed in on your feet and it would go slow-mo, and you'd use your analog sticks to flip the board in different directions and then land the trick. So, I think it was called Nail the Trick or something like that. And, that was a cool little feature, and Project 8 still kind of kept the same gameplay other than, that new little feature. One thing that did suck about it, though, was that the PS2 version and, the previous generation of the games suffered because, of course, it had issues. I remember the PS2 version having quite a few mechanical issues and just less detail as well. Whereas the PS3 and 360 versions, that's where they really focused on it. They actually focused on, the detail of the skateboard. You could actually tell in the 360 and PS3 versions that after you land a trick, the character, the skater, actually moves his feet, readjusts his feet on the board after he lands, or he adjusts his feet depending on what kind of trick he's gonna do. If he moves his feet more to the left of the board at an angle when he's about to fucking pop an ollie and kick out to do a kickflip, you'll notice those little things if you really pay attention to the board and the feet on the 360 and PS3 versions, which is a nice little detail. Whereas the PS2 versions and Xbox version kind of lacked that. But you know, it's whatever. So I would say if you are gonna try to play Project 8, definitely play it on the 360 or the PS3. Now the opening to Project 8 was amazing. Like I love the Project 8 opening. It has one of my favorite songs of all time. So it holds a special place in my heart. I'll post a link down to the Project 8 opening, just in case you guys don't know how it opens. But it has such a good freaking opening, and I think that was one of the biggest like things that got me hyped for Project 8. Now you say my hype kind of died after I played it because you know it wasn't all that great, but I think one of the main things I loved about it, other than the opening, was the fact that they included Jason Lee. Jason Lee, the actor / skater. Yes, he was also Coach Frank in Skate 3, but remember this game takes place before Skate even existed. Or, well, this game released before Skate even existed, so I'm pretty sure this was Jason Lee's very first video game appearance was in Tony Hawk's Project 8, which is great because Jason Lee is one of my favorite actors and skaters. So yeah, honestly, I love Project 8, but I really do think that Tony Hawk's American Wasteland was the last true, just good Tony Hawk game. Like, if you want Tony Hawk in all its greatness, you know, if you loved Underground 1 and 2, and you never played American Wasteland, play American Wasteland. You know, still has that nice little mini open world. It has great maps, great areas to skate in, and a great skater list as well, and an amazing soundtrack. And, you know, I'm gonna look at the manual real quick. Does it have a nice little manual? It's not really colored at all. There's no pictures in it. It's just a standard little manual. I was expecting a little more, but yeah, it's just a standard. Just tells you about the tricks and stuff. I thought that maybe there was gonna be pictures in there and stuff, but it's one of the more lame manuals. But at least you get a manual, man. You get a booklet. You get to say that your game is complete. Unlike nowadays, where you open the case and get a disc with the game that's not even on the disc and a fucking spot for a manual, but there's no manual in there. Gotta love it. But yes, Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, in my opinion, was the last actual good standalone Tony Hawk game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What was your favorite Tony Hawk game? What was the last game that you think was actually peak Tony Hawk? I'd love to hear it. Until next time, guys, peace out. Keep gaming.